Hi everybody, my name is Troy Wingard and I'm with Brambleton Library's Team Services. Today's project I have for you is going to be really cool. I'm going to show you how to use everyday materials and common tools to create your own bound notebooks and journals and sketchbooks using a traditional bookbinding technique. You can even use this method to bind together PDF documents that you've downloaded and printed at home. And I think that this is a great project for teens because of three things I look for in almost any project. It's quick, it's easy, and most of all, it's cheap. So let's get started. Okay, this method of basic bookbinding I'm going to be showing you today is called Japanese 4-hole binding. And it's very easy for any beginner to try. It basically consists of 4 holes equally spaced along the spine of your book. And then it's a course of thread that is stitched in a very specific pattern. Now you can use just about any paper for this. Now for this demonstration, I'm just using common printer paper that you guys probably have at home. But I've decided to cut my 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper about in half to make a smaller book, but you can make your books to be any size or format. All right, this next part is purely optional, but it's going to add to the character of your finished bound book, and that's going to be picking out the cover for your binding. Now, if you decide on a cover, the cool part is you can use just about any material or design that you would like. I've got some example papers here. I've got a couple of papers that I picked up from the craft store that you can buy. It's very inexpensive. I found some recycled cardboard. Here's some more paper and cardstock from the craft store. I've even found some old burlap, and I've even got some fabric at the house that I could actually make a bound book out of. These are all great papers, but for my demonstration to you guys, I have chosen some yellow and black cardstock. I'm going to use yellow for the front cover, and I'm going to use black for the back cover. Now just remember, this is the time to have fun with your book and to be as creative as possible because this is going to be your book. Now, to bind the paper and the cover together, you're going to need a needle and some thread to create this binding. Now, your traditional sewing needle and sewing thread are going to be way too small to bind with, so you're going to need to go to the craft store and pick up some larger needles, such as this embroidery needle. And you're also going to need to pick up embroidery floss. Now, this stuff is basically individual cotton threads that are wrapped together to form a thick cord. And you can find this stuff at any craft store, and it comes about in every color in the rainbow. Embroidery floss is also really cheap, and you can get 24 feet of this stuff for as little as 50 cents for each one of these little packets. Okay, now I've used a ruler and a pencil to measure and mark where my 4 holes are going to be near the spine. Now this is my front cover right here, and I've made all these marks on this front cover. It's also best to keep your holes at least a ½ inch from the top and from the bottom edges of your book, as well as a ½ inch from your spine. And doing this is going to give your binding a lot of strength, and it's going to show off that colorful floss that you've chosen to bind your book with. Now that you've marked your holes on one side, you want to carefully square up your pages and then secure 3 of the sides with just common binding clips that you can get from the office supply store. Sometimes it's smart to add some scrap cardboard in between your clips and the cover to keep from the clips from denting your book. Okay, now it's time to talk about making the holes. Now, this method of Japanese 4-hole bookbinding is also known as stab binding, because traditionally one would use a really sharp tool like a bookbinding awl to actually stab through the paper to make the holes. The problem with a bookbinding awl is that most teens really don't have access to this tool. So the best alternative to this is to use a hammer and a piece of scrap wood and a really small nail, like a finishing nail, to create your holes. Okay, to make my holes, I'm taking my very small and smooth finishing nail and I'm going to place them right where my holes should be. And I'm going to lightly tap this nail all the way through my paper into the wood. Like so. Now, some of you may become a little bit more ambitious and decide to bind together books with a lot of pages. And so you may find that creating holes with a hammer and a nail for books that's over 1/4 of an inch thick may become a little bit more difficult. Well, in that case, it might be a little bit more effective for you to drill your holes with an actual drill and a very small drill bit. All right, now it's time to thread your needle. So you're going to take your embroidery needle and you're going to take your floss and you're going to thread that needle. And after you do so, you're going to tie a very loose knot through the eye of that needle. And that's going to be important because it's going to keep the thread from falling off the needle when you are pushing it through the pages. Also, you're going to need one long piece of continuous floss to complete your binding. So to determine this, take the measurement of your book spine and multiply it by 6. And that should get you enough floss to complete your binding with just a little to spare. So in my case, my spine is around 9 inches. So I'm going to need about 54 inches of floss to complete my binding. All right, everybody, so now it's time to actually demonstrate the stitching for your binding. And so I have made a little wooden model that looks exactly like my book that I want to bind, and I did this because it's going to be a lot easier for you to see this. And I also have a big, thick piece of ribbon here. So to begin your binding, you want to make sure that the spine is facing you and that your holes are numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take your needle and you are going to start the binding by coming up through hole number 2. And you want to come up completely just about and leave just about a few inches of the end from the back of your cover. Then what you're going to do is once you have pulled your thread up through hole number 2, you're going to wrap it around the spine and you're going to come back up through hole number 2 again. And make sure that it doesn't accidentally pull out the end of your floss. After you go around the spine, you're going to go over to hole number 3 and go down hole number 3 and pull it a little tight. And then you're going to come around the spine and go back down hole number 3 again. Okay? After that, your needle should be at the bottom or the back of your book. You're going to come up through hole number 4 and you're going to go around the spine again and come back up through hole number 4. Pull it a little tight. After that, you're going to do something a little different. You're going to go around the top of your book and then come back up through hole number 4 again. And this is the way it should look. Once you've done that, you will go down hole number 3 again with your needle. Pull it tight, and you will come up hole number 2. Okay. After that, you're going to go back down hole number 1 and come around the spine and back down hole number 1 again. And then you're going to come up around the edge of the book, back down hole number 1, and you're going to meet the last part of you're going to join the 2 ends of your floss together in a knot. So you'll tie this off in a square knot, nice and tight, and you're done with your binding. Alright guys, well I hope that you found this to be a really cool and fun project. If you want to learn more about the traditional bookbinding techniques of Japan, be sure to drop by your local branch of the Loudoun County Library and ask a librarian to help you out with all the resources that we have. Also, don't forget to bring by some of the bookbinding projects that you've made. We'd really love to see how creative you get with some of your finished books. Okay guys, thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you next time.